You want to see something that'll make your blood run cold? Watch your wife practice crying on command in front of the bathroom mirror at 2 in the morning. That's exactly what I was looking at on my security monitor when this whole thing started unraveling. My name is Kyle Patterson. I'm 43, been running Patterson Freight Solutions here in Memphis for 9 years now. Built it up from Dad's old delivery truck after he passed. Heart attack at 58 right there in the cab of that beat-up Ford. Now we're running 18 trucks and grossing about $2. $8 million annually. Not bad for a guy who started with a single vehicle and a stack of unpaid bills. But let me back up to that bathroom mirror scene, because that's when I knew Brielle wasn't just going through some midlife crisis. She was rehearsing, standing there in her pajamas, making her face all sad and vulnerable, then checking how it looked. Then doing it again. Different angle, different expression. Like she was preparing for an audition. I'd installed the Hikvision DS7608 NIK2 system about 6 months earlier. 8 4K cameras with night vision, 4 TB network video recorder, auto backup to AWS S3 every 24 hours with 256-bit encryption. Insurance company knocked 15% off our premium for having it. That's about $3,000 in savings annually on a business with equipment worth over $2 million. The whole setup cost me about $4,000. But when you're running freight operations across 3 states, that ROI pays for itself in the first year. The cameras weren't supposed to be watching my wife practice fake emotions. They were for security after we had a break-in at the warehouse where someone tried to steal copper wire from our refrigerated units. But here's the thing about modern security systems. They record everything in common areas, and that includes the hallway outside our bedroom where she thought nobody could see her. Brielle and I had been married 8 years. Met her when she was working as a paralegal at Patterson, Miller & Associates downtown. No relation to us despite the name. She was smart, ambitious, had big plans. Said she wanted to go to law school someday, maybe start her own practice. I supported that dream completely. Paid for her LSAT prep course twice, helped her apply to 3 different schools including University of Memphis and Nashville School of Law. None of them worked out. Her scores were decent but not great, and law school is expensive. After that second rejection, she just stopped working entirely. Said she was exploring other career options while figuring out her next move. Those career options seemed to involve spending 8 hours a day on real estate websites and having long phone conversations with lawyers about asset protection strategies and business valuation methods. When I asked about it, she said she was researching investment opportunities for us. Maybe we should diversify into commercial real estate, she said. Made sense at the time. Freight companies need warehouse space, and Memphis has a lot of undervalued commercial properties near the river. The freight business had been better than good to us. Started with local furniture deliveries for 3 shops in Midtown. Now we handle LTL freight for FedEx Ground, 2 major appliance distributors. And we just landed a contract with a medical supply company that ships across the Southeast. Last year, we cleared about $400,000 in net profit after expenses, taxes, and equipment loans, not counting the appreciation on our truck fleet and the warehouse property we bought in 2019. But here's what most people don't understand about logistics. It's not just about moving stuff from point A to point B. You're dealing with DOT regulations, commercial driver license requirements, fuel hedging when diesel prices swing 20% in 6 months, insurance costs that can eat 10% of your revenue, and driver turnover that's running 30% industry-wide. We've been lucky to keep ours around 15% because we pay above market rate and offer health insurance. The competition is brutal too. You've got mega carriers like XPO and J.B. Hunt that can undercut you on volume pricing, local guys who'll work for cost just to keep their trucks moving, and new technology companies trying to Uberize freight shipping. Plus, you're always one accident away from a lawsuit that could wipe you out if your insurance coverage isn't perfect. But success changes things between people. Brielle started asking different questions about 6 months ago. Why wasn't her name on the business accounts? Why didn't she have more say in major equipment purchases? I explained it was cleaner for tax purposes, kept the corporate structure simple. Dad had set up the LLC that way back in 2003, and our accountant Ray Spencer said to leave it alone unless we had a specific reason to change it. Tennessee has favorable laws for single-member LLCs, and adding a spouse can complicate things if anything ever happens. That wasn't good enough anymore. She wanted to understand our complete financial picture, not just the household budget, but business cash flow, asset values, depreciation schedules, the works. Fair enough, couples should talk about money. But when your wife starts asking about business valuation methods and whether equipment loans are personally guaranteed, that's not casual curiosity. That's someone getting advice from professionals. The strange behavior ramped up over about 3 months. Phone always face down during dinner. Long conversations that stopped abruptly when I walked into rooms. She'd position herself weird during arguments, like she was performing for someone who wasn't there. Always with that expansive leather purse, too. Never more than 3 feet away from her. The same purse we'd fought about when she bought it for $1,500 without mentioning it. I'm a practical guy. When something doesn't add up in business, you audit the books. When equipment starts making funny noises, you tear it down and find the problem. When your wife starts acting like she's auditioning for a part in some drama you've never heard of, you figure out what's going on. So I started paying attention to the security system logs. The Hikvision software tracks every login, every file accessed, every recording downloaded. That's when I discovered Brielle had been accessing the recordings. A lot. The system showed her username logged in at all hours. 2 in the morning while I was asleep. 3 in the afternoon when I was at the warehouse dealing with a broken hydraulic lift. She'd been systematically going through weeks of footage, downloading specific segments, creating her own copies of our arguments and storing them on her laptop. I opened one of the files she'd saved and immediately knew we had a problem. It was from a fight we'd had about money. She'd bought that $1,500 purse without mentioning it. In the original 20-minute recording, you could hear the whole context. I'd come home from dealing with a driver who'd been in a fender bender on I-40, seen the receipt on the kitchen counter, asked if we could discuss big purchases beforehand. We were reinvesting most profits back into new equipment. Had our eye on 2 Kenworth T680s that would let us bid on longer hauls. And cash flow was always tight in the logistics business. The conversation started calm. I explained my concerns about the UPS regional contract we were bidding on. $500,000 over 2 years, but they were picky about financial stability. They wanted to see consistent cash reserves and low debt-to-asset ratios. A surprise $1,500 purchase wouldn't break us, but it was the principle of the thing. She got defensive, said I was treating her like a child who needed permission to buy anything. I tried to explain that wasn't it. We just needed to coordinate on spending so we didn't overdraw the business accounts when I had payroll coming up. Things escalated from there like they do when you're both tired and stressed. But the file she'd saved only captured the last part. My voice raised in frustration, saying she was being irresponsible with our money. Her crying, asking why I was being so cruel to her. None of the context that led to that moment. She was editing our fights. I spent the next 3 hours going through every file she'd accessed. Same pattern every time. Arguments that lasted 20 or 30 minutes compressed into 2-minute clips that made me look like some controlling maniac who screamed at his wife for no reason. The security system I'd installed to protect our business was being used against me. The worst part was realizing how deliberate it all was. I found footage of her reviewing previous recordings on her laptop, taking notes on which phrases got the strongest reactions from me. There was even video of her on the phone with someone, probably a lawyer, discussing which clips would be most effective in court. But the smoking gun was a conversation I'd completely forgotten about. 3 months earlier, when she thought I was at the warehouse dealing with a refrigeration unit breakdown, she'd had her friend Ashley over. They discussed her divorce strategy in detail, sitting right there in our living room. The key is getting him angry on camera, she told Ashley. Make him say things that sound threatening. Judges eat that stuff up, especially when it's a successful businessman going against a scared wife. Ashley asked if she felt bad about lying. It's not lying if he really is controlling, Brielle replied. I'm just helping the truth come out in a way people will understand. He makes all the money decisions. He bought this house without asking me. He runs that business like I don't exist. The conversation lasted 40 minutes. She laid out her entire plan from the initial recordings to the final courtroom performance. Even discussed how much she expected to get in the settlement. Half of everything, plus monthly support that would basically be my entire salary, and what she'd do with the money afterward. Maybe move to Nashville, she said. Start fresh somewhere nobody knew about the divorce. I had it all on tape. Her conspiracy, her manipulation, her deliberate fraud. The only question was how to present it without looking like I'd been spying on my wife. That's when I called Earl Thompson. Earl's been in the logistics business for 30 years, built Thompson Distribution from 2 trucks to a $50 million operation before he sold out to XPO in 2018. He's also been through 2 divorces, both ugly, both expensive. If anyone would understand what I was dealing with, it was Earl. We met at his favorite barbecue place on Beale Street the next day. I laid out the whole situation, the recordings, the editing, the conversation with Ashley. Earl listened without interrupting, occasionally shaking his head. Son, he said when I finished, you're in a world of hurt. But you might also have the best evidence I've ever heard of in a case like this. He pushed his plate aside and leaned forward. Question is, you ready to fight? Because once you go down this road, there's no backing up. She's gonna come at you with everything she's got. Earl had fought his second wife, Linda, for 3 years over his business assets. She'd claimed emotional distress, said the stress of being married to a workaholic trucker had given her anxiety and depression. Cost him $2 million in settlement plus another $500,000 in legal fees. Difference is, Earl said, you've got proof she's lying. I just had my word against hers. He gave me the name of his attorney, Wade Miller, who'd handled both his divorces and knew every trick in the book. Wade's expensive, but he's worth it. Tell him I sent you. I also talked to Brett Sullivan, my operations manager, who'd been with the company for 4 years. Brett had worked his way up from driver to dispatcher to operations, knew the business inside and out. More importantly, he had seen how Brielle acted around the office during the few times she'd stopped by. Boss, I don't want to speak out of turn, Brett said when I asked him about it, but your wife never seemed happy about the business doing well. Most wives would be proud, you know? But she always acted like the company was competition for her attention. Brett had noticed other things too. How she'd ask detailed questions about our contracts and revenue when she thought I wasn't listening. How she'd pump our drivers for information about routes and customers. At the time, we'd all figured she was just trying to understand the business better. She asked me once about the insurance policies, Brett said. Wanted to know if you were covered for disability. What would happen to the business if something happened to you? Said she was worried about your health with all the stress you were under. That conversation happened 2 weeks before I'd installed the security system. Now it made perfect sense. She wasn't worried about my health. She was doing research. I called Wade Miller that afternoon. He agreed to see me the next day, warned me his retainer was $15,000 up front. Fair enough. If Earl trusted him with a $50 million business, I could trust him with mine. But first, I had some preparation to do. I spent the entire night backing up every file from the security system to 3 different locations. The AWS cloud storage, a local hard drive I kept in our office safe, and another drive I took to Earl's house for safekeeping. If Brielle wanted to play games with recordings, I'd make sure I had all the footage, not just the edited highlights she thought would serve her purposes. 3 weeks later, she made her move. I came home to find the divorce papers on the kitchen counter next to a note saying she was staying at her sister's house until I moved out. The petition was 12 pages long, detailed accusations of emotional abuse, financial control, and creating a hostile living environment. She was asking for half the business, the house, both cars, and monthly support payments that would basically amount to my entire salary, plus attorney fees. The language was brutal. According to the filing, I was a manipulative businessman who used his success to intimidate and isolate his wife. I controlled every aspect of our finances, prevented her from pursuing her career goals, and created an atmosphere of fear through verbal threats and intimidation tactics. Wade Miller read through the filing while I waited in his office, occasionally making skeptical noises. She's claiming video evidence, he said finally. Says you threatened her on multiple occasions, that you installed surveillance equipment to monitor her activities. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly which recording she had. Can she do that? I asked, if she can prove these claims maybe. Tennessee isn't a no-fault state when it comes to asset division. Abuse changes everything. He flipped through the pages. But Kyle, I've seen cases like this before. The key is going to be context. Within a week, our joint accounts were frozen. Brielle's attorney, Lisa Hoffman, had filed an emergency motion claiming I might hide assets or retaliate financially against my wife. The judge granted it pending a full hearing. I had to borrow money from the business account to pay my own lawyer and cover basic expenses. That's when the business impact really started hitting home. Word gets around fast in the logistics industry, especially in a city like Memphis where everybody knows everybody. Our dispatcher started fielding calls from drivers asking if their paychecks were secure. 2 of our biggest customers, the medical supply company and one of the appliance distributors, started asking questions about our financial stability. The UPS contract we'd been negotiating for 6 months suddenly went cold. Their procurement manager, who'd been enthusiastic about our bid, stopped returning calls. Brett pulled me aside one morning and said he'd heard through the grapevine that they were concerned about working with a company whose owner was going through a messy divorce. Boss, the guys are worried, Brett said. They're hearing stories about frozen accounts and court battles. Some of them are already getting calls from Memphis Freight Solutions offering them jobs. Memphis Freight Solutions was our biggest local competitor, run by a guy named Tommy Gates, who'd been trying to poach our contracts for 3 years. He had the reputation for playing dirty, underbidding us just enough to steal accounts, then raising prices once he had the business locked up. Earl Thompson called me that same week. "Son, you need to understand something. In this business, perception is everything. Your customers need to know their freight is going to move on time every time. If they start thinking you're distracted by personal problems, they'll find someone else." He was right, and it made me angrier than I'd been since this whole thing started. I'd worked 16-hour days for 9 years building this company. I'd missed family dinners, skipped vacations, turned down social events to make sure every delivery was on time and every customer was happy. Now Brielle was trying to destroy all of that with lies and edited video clips. Her strategy became clear over the following month. Lisa Hoffman was known as one of Memphis's most aggressive divorce attorneys. She specialized in high-asset divorces where emotional abuse was claimed, and her track record was impressive. She'd gotten a construction company owner's ex-wife half his business plus $1 million in cash. Another case involved a restaurant chain owner who ended up paying alimony for 15 years. They demanded mediation before trial, confident they held all the cards. The session was scheduled for a Friday afternoon at Hoffman's office. Brielle sat across from me wearing makeup that emphasized shadows under her eyes, like she hadn't been sleeping. She avoided eye contact, playing the traumatized wife perfectly. Hoffman spread documents across the conference table like she was dealing cards. "My client has documented a pattern of escalating abuse over the past year," she announced. "We have recordings that clearly show Mr. Patterson using intimidation tactics and verbal threats to control my client's behavior. We'd like to review those recordings," Wade said, "in due time. First, let's discuss a fair settlement that acknowledges the trauma my client has endured." Their offer was everything. Half the business, which they valued at $8 million based on some consulting report they'd commissioned. The house, both cars, even Dad's old pocket watch that Brielle had always claimed was worthless but apparently had been appraised at $3,000. In exchange, I'd get to walk away without a lengthy trial that would air our private business in public court. "That's not a settlement," Wade said. "That's extortion." Hoffman smiled. "That's justice for a woman who's been silenced for too long. My client is prepared to testify about years of psychological abuse, financial control, and intimidation. The recordings speak for themselves." The mediation failed. Trial was set for 6 weeks later. During that time, Brielle played her role perfectly. She started therapy for trauma recovery with a psychologist who specialized in domestic abuse cases. Got a restraining order that forced me to move into a Hampton Inn near the airport. Posted carefully worded social media updates about finding her voice and breaking free from toxic relationships. The Memphis Business Journal ran a small item about the divorce filing that mentioned the abuse allegations. Nothing detailed, but enough that people in our industry circles started asking questions. I started getting those looks at Chamber of Commerce meetings. The ones that say people are wondering what really happened behind closed doors. Meanwhile, I spent every evening in that hotel room going through our security footage with a legal pad and stopwatch, documenting every conversation she'd recorded, noting what she'd included and what she'd edited out. Wade had hired a digital forensics expert named Dr. Susan Andrews, who specialized in analyzing video evidence for court cases. Dr. Andrews confirmed what I already knew. The files Brielle had saved were edited versions of longer recordings. She could prove it through metadata analysis and timestamp verification. More importantly, she could demonstrate that the original files still existed on our security system's backup servers. 2 days before trial, Wade called with news that made my blood pressure spike. They filed additional evidence. Video footage of you threatening to make her pay if she ever left you. I remembered that argument, and I knew exactly how bad it was going to look. We met at Wade's office that evening. He pulled up the video file on his laptop. There I was, standing in our living room, pointing at Brielle and saying, "If you walk out that door, you're gonna pay for it. I promise you that." It looked terrible. Sounded worse. My face was red with anger, voice raised and aggressive. Brielle cowered against the wall, tears streaming down her face, looking genuinely terrified. But I remembered what happened next. After I'd said those words, I'd immediately apologized. Explained that I meant she'd regret missing her sister's wedding, not that I'd retaliate somehow. We'd talked it out, ended up laughing about how we'd both overreacted to wedding stress. "Where's the rest?" I asked. Wade paused the video. This is what they submitted, about 90 seconds of footage. The argument lasted 20 minutes, and I apologized right after that. That's when I realized Brielle had made a crucial mistake. She'd been so focused on creating incriminating clips that she'd forgotten something important about our security system. "I have access to the original files," I said. "Not just the copies she downloaded and edited, but the raw footage from the security system's main server. Everything gets automatically stored on an external AWS server for insurance compliance purposes." Wade leaned forward. "Complete versions of what?" "Every conversation she recorded. Every argument she edited. The full context she's been cutting out to make me look abusive." The trial started on a Thursday morning in October. Judge Patricia Wells presided. She had a reputation for fairness but little patience for games or manipulation. The courtroom was packed. Word had gotten out about the case and several local business owners had shown up to see how it played out. Earl Thompson was there, sitting in the gallery with two other logistics company owners who knew my reputation. Brett Sullivan had taken the morning off to testify if needed. Even Dr. Andrews, our digital forensics expert, was ready with her analysis equipment. Lisa Hoffman presented Brielle's case first, painting a picture of escalating abuse supported by carefully selected video clips. Each recording was damning out of context. Me yelling about money. Me slamming a door during an argument. Me telling Brielle she was being unreasonable and selfish. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hoffman said during her opening statement, "you're going to see and hear evidence of a pattern of psychological abuse that escalated over months. Mr. Patterson used his business success and financial control to intimidate and isolate his wife." Brielle took the witness stand wearing a conservative dress and minimal makeup, playing the recovering victim perfectly. She spoke quietly about feeling trapped in a marriage with someone who controlled every aspect of her life. "He installed those cameras everywhere," she testified, her voice barely above a whisper. "Said it was for security, but it felt like surveillance, like he was watching my every move, waiting for me to make a mistake." Hoffman played the threatening video again. "Can you tell the court how you felt when your husband said these words to you?" Terrified, Brielle whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I knew he meant it. That he'd find a way to hurt me if I tried to leave. The performance was flawless. Even I almost believed it watching from the defendant's table." She'd practiced this testimony for months, perfecting every gesture and inflection. Then Wade started his cross-examination. He began slow, asking basic questions about the security system. When it was installed, why, who maintained it? He established that I'd paid for it, installed it myself, and maintained full administrative access to all recordings. "Mrs. Patterson," Wade said, "you testified that you felt these cameras were installed to watch you. But isn't it true that this system was installed after a break-in at your husband's business warehouse?" "I suppose, and isn't it true that similar systems are standard in the logistics industry for insurance compliance purposes?" Hoffman objected, but Judge Wells allowed the question. "Mrs. Patterson, have you ever accessed recordings from this security system yourself?" That's when her composure first cracked. She looked at Hoffman with panic in her eyes. "I don't understand the question." Wade pulled out the access logs Dr. Andrews had analyzed. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence showing that Mrs. Patterson accessed the security system 47 times over a 6-month period, downloading and editing specific recordings." "Objection," Hoffman stood up. "This is irrelevant to the abuse allegations." "On the contrary," Wade said, "it's directly relevant to the credibility of the evidence she's presented." Judge Wells reviewed the logs. "Objection overruled. Continue, Mr. Miller." That's when Wade played the first complete recording, the threatening exchange about her sister's wedding. But this time including my immediate apology and our reconciliation afterward. The complete context made it clear I'd been talking about her missing a family event, not threatening retaliation. "As you can see, Your Honor," Wade explained, the defendant's words were taken from a longer conversation where he clarified his meaning and apologized for his tone. The plaintiff's version deliberately removes this context. We went through each recording methodically, every edited clip followed by the complete conversation, every accusation of abuse followed by evidence of manipulation and provocation. But the real bombshell came when Wade played the conversation Brielle had with Ashley. Her own voice discussing her strategy to make him look unstable and get everything he thinks he deserves. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Wells asked to review the recording herself, listening with headphones to make sure she heard every word clearly. "The key is getting him angry on camera," Brielle's voice said through the courtroom speakers. "Judges eat that stuff up, especially when it's a successful businessman going against a scared wife." Hoffman tried to object, claiming the recording was inadmissible because it was made without her client's knowledge. But Wade was ready. "Your Honor, the plaintiff has spent this entire trial submitting recordings that were made without my client's knowledge. She can't claim that evidence obtained through secret recordings is valid when it supports her case, but invalid when it contradicts her story. Judge Wells agreed. The recording stood. After Wade finished his presentation, I stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to add something. The courtroom was still processing what they'd heard. Brielle sat frozen at the plaintiff's table, her carefully constructed victim persona crumbling. My wife walked into this courtroom with edited videos, fake tears, and a story designed to destroy my reputation and steal everything I've worked for, I said. She thought I was too stupid to realize what she was doing. I pulled out the folder containing printed screenshots from the security system logs. These documents show every time she accessed our security recordings over the past 6 months, every file she downloaded, every conversation she edited. This wasn't a desperate woman documenting abuse. This was calculated fraud. Judge Wells reviewed the access logs, comparing them to the dates of the arguments in question. The pattern was undeniable. Furthermore, I continued, the recording of her discussing this strategy with her friend proves this was premeditated fraud. She didn't document abuse. She manufactured it. Hoffman tried one last objection, but Judge Wells had heard enough. Counselor, your client has submitted deliberately falsified evidence to this court. That's perjury, and it's contempt of court. I'm dismissing this petition immediately. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the silent courtroom. Earl Thompson started clapping from the gallery, and several other business owners joined in. The aftermath was swift. Judge Wells referred Brielle's case to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. The frozen accounts were released back to me within a week. Brielle faced not only the collapsed divorce case, but also mounting legal bills from both sides. She eventually pleaded guilty to reduced charges to avoid prison time, got probation, community service, and a permanent criminal record. Her dream of law school died with her felony conviction. The business recovered faster than I'd expected. The UPS contract came through 2 weeks after the trial. Turned out they'd been waiting to see how things resolved before moving forward. Word spread quickly through the logistics community about what had really happened, and we actually picked up 3 new accounts from competitors of Memphis Freight Solutions. 6 months later, I bought a new house outside Memphis, closer to the warehouse. Kept the security system, though. Old habits die hard, and the trial had taught me the value of complete documentation. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal or the legal fees or even the months of stress. It was realizing how long she'd been planning it, how carefully she'd studied my reactions and vulnerabilities. But sometimes the people who think they know you best are the ones who underestimate what you're capable of when you have to protect everything you've built. These days, Patterson Freight Solutions is stronger than ever. 22 trucks now, new contracts across 4 states, and a reputation for reliability that money can't buy. Technology is only as smart as the person using it. And if you're going to play games with recordings, you better make sure you control all the footage, not just the highlights you think serve your purpose. Trust is earned. But preparation? That's everything.